The triplex penthouse atop the Obsidian Spire in Chicago was a marvel of architectural coldness. 60 floors up, it was a museum of glass, brushed steel, and suffocating silence. Quinton Rhodes, a billionaire infrastructure titan known in the press as the Iron Architect, stood at the floor-to-ceiling window. He owned the skyline, but he was a stranger in his own halls. Behind him, his 7-year-old daughter, Sloane, sat on a charcoal velvet sofa, staring vacantly at a tablet. She hadn't spoken a word since her mother's funeral 18 months ago. The silence was a structural flaw that no amount of private equity could retrofit. Quinton had hired the best speech pathologists and the most expensive nannies in the Midwest. None of them could bridge the gap. Then, at 8 o'clock on a humid Tuesday morning, Kandace Thorne walked through the heavy oak doors. She didn't arrive with a formal resume or a portfolio of references. She arrived with a professional cleaning kit, a vintage copy of The Invisible Man tucked under her arm, and a presence that made the sterile air in the room suddenly feel heavy with intention. Quinton barely looked up from his phone when the agency coordinator introduced her. He was expecting another interchangeable face in a rotation of people who cleaned around his life without ever touching it. The coordinator rattled off credentials about certifications and background checks, but Quinton wasn't listening. He was reading an email about a delayed permit in Detroit, his mind already 3 cities away. Kandace set her kit down near the entrance and walked slowly through the main living area. Her eyes moved deliberately across every surface, every corner, every piece of furniture arranged with the precision of a showroom. She didn't say a word. She just observed. And in that observation, something shifted. She stopped in front of a massive, abstract sculpture near the dining area. It was all sharp angles and cold metal, twisting upward like a frozen scream. Quinton had paid $250,000 for it at an auction in New York. The artist had called it Ascending Isolation. Kandace stared at it for a long moment, then glanced over at Sloane, who was curled into the corner of the sofa, her small body angled away from the sculpture like it was something to avoid. The agency coordinator finished her speech and left. Quinton pocketed his phone and finally looked at Kandace directly. She was younger than he expected, maybe early 30s, with natural hair pulled back in a neat bun and eyes that didn't flinch under his gaze. Most people who worked for him had a particular energy, a careful deference that made them easy to forget. Kandace didn't have that energy. She looked at him the way an engineer looks at a blueprint, searching for the flaw in the design. "You'll start in the West Wing," Quinton said, his voice flat and businesslike. "The cleaning schedule is on the counter. My assistant will check in weekly. If you have questions, email her. I'm not usually here during the day." Kandace nodded once, but she didn't move toward the cleaning supplies. Instead, she walked over to the sofa where Sloane sat. The little girl didn't look up. Kandace crouched down slowly, eye level with the child, but she didn't speak. She just stayed there, quiet and still, like she was waiting for permission to exist in the same space. Quinton watched, confused and slightly annoyed. He was about to say something when Kandace reached into her bag and pulled out a small sketch pad and a set of colored pencils. She placed them gently on the coffee table in front of Sloane, then stood and walked away without a word. Sloane's eyes flickered toward the sketch pad, just for a second, but it was enough. Quinton left for his office downtown 20 minutes later. By the time he returned that evening, the penthouse looked different. Not cleaner, necessarily. Different. The sculpture was gone. In its place, taped to the wall with painter's tape, were a series of crayon drawings. Bridges. Dozens of them. Some were red, some were blue, some were just black lines on white paper. They were crude and uneven, the work of a child's hand, but they were unmistakably bridges. Quinton stood in the entryway staring at the wall. He recognized the drawings. They were Sloane's. He had seen her make them months ago, back when the therapists were still encouraging her to express herself through art. But he hadn't seen them since. He thought she'd stopped. Kandace emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She glanced at the wall, then at Quinton, reading his expression with the same careful attention she'd given the penthouse that morning. "She drew those," Kandace said simply. "I found them under her bed. Thought they deserved better than the dust." Quinton opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know what to say. The drawings were a reminder of something he'd lost, something he didn't know how to get back. He wanted to be angry that she'd moved his sculpture without asking, but the anger wouldn't come. All he felt was a strange, uncomfortable ache. "That sculpture cost more than most people make in a year," he said finally, his voice quieter than he intended. Kandace looked at him evenly. "I put it in storage. Third closet on the left. You can bring it back whenever you want." She turned and walked back into the kitchen, leaving Quinton alone with the bridges. That night, Quinton sat in his study with a glass of scotch he wasn't drinking. Through the open door, he could see Sloane standing in front of the wall of drawings, her small fingers tracing the lines of one of the bridges. She stayed there for almost 10 minutes, longer than she'd focused on anything in months. When Kandace left for the evening, Quinton found a folded piece of paper on his desk. It was one of Sloane's drawings, but on the back, written in neat handwriting, was a single sentence. "She remembers what you build. She's trying to show you." Quinton stared at the note for a long time. Then he folded it carefully and slipped it into his wallet. The next morning, Kandace arrived at 7:45, 15 minutes earlier than expected. Quinton was already awake, standing in the kitchen with a cup of coffee that had gone cold in his hand. He'd been up since 5, unable to sleep, replaying the image of Sloane standing in front of those drawings. Kandace set her bag down and pulled out a small speaker and her phone. Without asking, she connected the two and pressed play. The sound of jazz filled the penthouse. Not the smooth, ambient kind that played in hotel lobbies. This was raw and alive, with a trumpet that climbed and fell like a conversation. Quinton frowned. "I didn't ask for music." "I know," Kandace said, already moving toward the kitchen. "But this place is too quiet. Silence isn't peace, it's just empty." She opened the refrigerator and pulled out ingredients that hadn't been there yesterday. Eggs, butter, fresh vegetables, a loaf of bread that smelled like it came from a real bakery, not a delivery service. She moved through the kitchen with the efficiency of someone who'd cooked in tight spaces her whole life, her hands quick and sure. Quinton wanted to tell her to stop. This wasn't what he'd hired her for. But Sloane had appeared in the doorway, drawn by the music and the smell of something that wasn't pre-packaged or microwaved. She stood there watching Kandace work, her tablet forgotten in her hand. Kandace glanced at the little girl and smiled. Not the forced kind that adults used with children, but something genuine and easy. She cracked an egg into a bowl and held up the whisk. "Want to help?" Sloane didn't move, but she didn't leave either. Kandace shrugged and kept cooking. The trumpet played. The eggs sizzled in the pan, and for the first time in 18 months, the penthouse smelled like a home. When Kandace set the plates on the table, Quinton realized he was supposed to sit down and eat. Not at his desk, not standing by the window. At the table, with his daughter. He hesitated, feeling like a guest in his own space. But Sloane had already climbed into a chair, her eyes on the food. Quinton sat down across from her. The eggs were perfect. Seasoned with something he couldn't name, served with toast that had been buttered while it was still hot. Kandace didn't join them. She just wiped down the counter and moved into the next room, giving them space. Quinton looked at Sloane. She was eating slowly, carefully, like she was tasting something she'd forgotten existed. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words felt clumsy and wrong. So he just ate. And for 5 minutes, they sat together in a silence that didn't feel quite as heavy. Later, when Quinton was getting ready to leave for the office, he found Kandace in his private study. She was standing in front of his bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines of first editions he'd collected over the years. Books he'd bought because they looked impressive, not because he'd read them. "These are beautiful," she said quietly, not turning around. "Your wife had excellent taste." Quinton froze. No one talked about his wife. Not his assistant, not his lawyers, not even his own family. The grief was a locked door, and everyone had learned not to knock. But Kandace wasn't knocking. She was just standing there, holding a copy of Baldwin's The Fire Next Time, her thumb tracing the gold lettering on the cover. "How do you know they were hers?" Quinton asked, his voice tight. Kandace finally turned to look at him. "Because these are the kinds of books people read when they're trying to understand the world, not decorate it." She placed the book back on the shelf with a gentleness that felt almost reverent, then walked past him toward the door. As she passed, she paused. "She understood loneliness," Kandace said softly. "I can tell." Then she was gone, leaving Quinton standing alone in a room full of books he'd never opened. That night, Quinton came home to the smell of garlic and onions, something rich and warm that made his stomach remind him he'd skipped lunch. Kandace was in the kitchen again, stirring a pot on the stove. Sloane was sitting at the counter, watching her with the kind of focus Quinton hadn't seen in her eyes since before the funeral. Kandace was talking. Not to Sloane directly, but just talking, narrating what she was doing like a cooking show host. "You've got to let the onions get soft first. If you rush it, they stay sharp and bitter. But if you're patient, they turn sweet. Funny how that works." Sloane tilted her head, listening. Quinton stood in the doorway, invisible. He watched Kandace move through his kitchen like she belonged there. Watched his daughter lean forward on the counter. Watched something that looked almost like hope flicker in the sterile air. When dinner was ready, Kandace plated the food and set it on the table. Chicken, rice, greens cooked with something that smelled like smoke and comfort. Quinton sat down without being asked this time. Kandace started to leave, but Quinton spoke before he could stop himself. "Stay." She turned, surprised. "Eat with us," he said, his voice awkward, uncertain. "There's plenty." Kandace looked at him for a long moment, then at Sloane, then back at him. Something shifted in her expression, like she was deciding whether to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "All right," she said finally. She sat down at the table, and the three of them ate together. No one spoke much. The music was still playing in the background, something softer now, with a piano that felt like rain. Sloane finished her entire plate, then reached for seconds. Quinton couldn't remember the last time he'd seen her eat that much. When the meal was over, Kandace started to clear the dishes, but Quinton stopped her. "Leave them," he said. "I'll handle it." Kandace raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. She gathered her things and headed for the door. As she was leaving, Sloane did something that made Quinton's breath catch. She reached out and touched Kandace's hand. It was brief, just a brush of small fingers against skin. But it was intentional, deliberate. The first voluntary touch Sloane had made with another human being in 18 months. Kandace looked down at the little girl, and her eyes softened in a way that made Quinton's chest tighten. She didn't make a big deal of it. She just smiled, gave Sloane's hand a gentle squeeze, and walked out the door. Quinton stood frozen in the hallway, staring at his daughter. Sloane looked up at him, and for just a second, he saw something in her eyes he thought he'd lost forever. Recognition. Then his phone rang. The name on the screen made his jaw clench. Tinsley Dubois. He answered. "Quinton, darling." Tinsley's voice poured through the speaker like expensive wine. "I'm in the neighborhood. Thought I'd stop by. We need to talk about the board meeting next week. I'll be there in 10 minutes. She hung up before he could say no. Quinton looked at Sloane, then at the kitchen where the dishes were still on the table, then at the door where Kandace had just left. Something was shifting. He could feel it. The structure he'd built around his life, The careful distance he'd maintained was starting to crack, and he didn't know if that was the best thing that had ever happened to him or the beginning of a collapse he couldn't control. 10 minutes later, the elevator chimed. Tinsley Dubois stepped into the penthouse like she owned it. She was all sharp edges and polished confidence, dressed in a cream suit that probably cost more than a car. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, each step a declaration of territory. She stopped in the entryway and looked around, her nose wrinkling slightly. "Quinton," she said, her voice dripping with concern that didn't reach her eyes. "What is that smell?" "Dinner," Quinton said flatly. Tinsley's expression flickered. "You cooked?" "No." Her eyes narrowed. She walked further into the penthouse, her gaze sweeping over the drawings on the wall, the dishes still on the table, the faint scent of spices that didn't belong in a place like this. "The help is cooking now?" Tinsley's tone was light, but there was something underneath it, something sharp. "How very domestic." Quinton felt his jaw tighten. "Her name is Kandace. And yes, she cooks." "I see." Tinsley walked over to the table and picked up one of the plates, examining it like evidence. "And you're eating what the maid makes. Interesting choice." "It's food, Tinsley, not a political statement." "Everything is a political statement, darling, especially for someone in your position." She set the plate down and turned to face him fully. "The board is already asking questions. You've been distant, distracted, missing calls. And now I hear you've hired some random woman with no real credentials to work in your home around your daughter. She came from the agency, same as everyone else. Did you vet her yourself?" Quinton didn't answer. Tinsley smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's what I thought." "Quinton, I'm saying this because I care about you. You're vulnerable right now. People notice. Your competitors notice. And when a man in your position starts making emotional decisions instead of strategic ones, it creates opportunities for others." "I'm fine." "Are you?" Tinsley stepped closer, her voice dropping to something almost intimate. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're letting a stranger reshape your life, and that's dangerous." Before Quinton could respond, Sloane appeared in the hallway. She was holding her tablet, but her eyes were on Tinsley, wary and uncertain. Tinsley's expression shifted, softening into something performative. "Hello, sweetheart. Remember me? Aunt Tinsley?" Sloane didn't move. She just stared. Tinsley's smile faltered for half a second, then recovered. She turned back to Quinton. "We'll talk more later. I just wanted to make sure you were thinking clearly." She walked toward the elevator, then paused. "Oh, and Quinton, keep an eye on your study. I noticed the maid was in there earlier, going through your books. Just thought you should know." The elevator doors closed and she was gone. Quinton stood in the silence, her words lingering like smoke. He looked at Sloane, who was still standing in the hallway, watching him. He thought about Kandace in his study, holding that book, tears in her eyes. He thought about the way she'd looked at his daughter, the way she'd moved through his home like she was trying to fix something broken. And he thought about Tinsley's warning, the insinuation that Kandace was a threat, a variable that didn't fit the equation. Quinton walked over to his daughter and knelt down so they were eye to eye. "What do you think of Kandace?" he asked quietly. Sloane looked at him. Her lips parted just slightly like she wanted to answer, but no sound came. She turned and walked back to her room, leaving Quinton alone with a question that had no answer. That night, Quinton couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day in his mind. The drawings on the wall, the food on the table, the touch of his daughter's hand, Tinsley's warning. At 2 a.m, he got up and walked to his study. He stood in front of the bookshelf, looking at the first editions his wife had chosen. He pulled out the Baldwin book Kandace had been holding and opened it. On the inside cover, in his wife's handwriting, was an inscription: "For the man who builds bridges, but forgets to cross them. Love always." Quinton closed the book carefully and put it back on the shelf. He didn't know what Kandace was doing in his home. He didn't know if Tinsley's suspicions had merit. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. For the first time in 18 months, his daughter had touched another person. And whoever Kandace Thorne really was, she was the reason why. The next morning, Quinton was waiting in the kitchen when Kandace arrived. She paused in the doorway, reading the shift in his energy. "We need to talk," Quinton said. Kandace set her bag down slowly. "All right." "Who are you?" The question hung in the air between them. Kandace didn't flinch. She just looked at him with those steady, unflinching eyes. "I'm someone who cleans houses," she said simply. "That's not an answer." "It's the one I'm giving you." Quinton stepped closer. "Tinsley said you were going through my books yesterday, my private collection." "I was," Kandace said without hesitation. "Your wife had good taste. I wanted to see what she valued." "You don't get to do that. You don't get to walk into my life and start rearranging things without permission." "You hired me to clean. I'm cleaning." Kandace's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. "But if you want me to pretend your home isn't broken, I can do that. I can dust around the cracks and leave everything exactly the way it is. Is that what you want?" Quinton stared at her. No one talked to him like this. Not his employees, not his board members, not even Tinsley. "My daughter touched you yesterday," he said, his voice quieter now. "That's the first time she's touched anyone in a year and a half." "How did you do that?" Kandace's expression softened, just slightly. "I didn't do anything. I just didn't treat her like she was broken." "She is broken." "No," Kandace said firmly. "She's grieving. There's a difference." The words hit Quinton harder than he expected. He felt something crack inside him, something he'd been holding together with sheer will and expensive therapy sessions that never worked. "What do you want from me?" he asked, and hated how much he sounded like a man who'd lost control. Kandace picked up her cleaning kit and walked past him toward the living room. She stopped at the doorway and looked back. "I don't want anything from you, Mr. Rhodes. But your daughter wants her father back, and right now, he's so busy being the iron architect that he forgot how to just be her dad." She walked away, leaving Quinton standing in the kitchen with a truth he didn't know how to carry. The days that followed developed a rhythm that felt almost normal. Kandace arrived early each morning. The music played, the food cooked. Sloane began spending more time in the kitchen, watching, sometimes helping in small ways. A hand steadying a bowl, a finger pointing at an ingredient. Quinton found himself coming home earlier, making excuses to leave the office before 6. He told himself it was to check on Sloane, but if he was honest, it was also to see what Kandace would do next. She had a way of moving through space that was both invisible and impossible to ignore. She didn't just clean, she rearranged, she replaced. She edited his life like a manuscript that needed a firmer hand. The cold, abstract art disappeared piece by piece, replaced by Sloane's drawings and photographs Quinton didn't even know existed. Pictures of his wife, smiling in moments he'd forgotten. Images of Sloane as a baby, as a toddler, as the little girl she'd been before grief stole her voice. One evening, Quinton came home to find Kandace sitting cross-legged on the floor with Sloane. They were surrounded by art supplies, paint, brushes, sheets of paper covered in color. Kandace was painting what looked like a bridge, long and elegant, stretching across a river that didn't exist. Sloane was painting too. Her bridge was smaller, shakier, but it mirrored Kandace's. Two bridges side by side. Quinton stood in the doorway watching. Neither of them noticed him. Kandace was humming along to the music, and Sloane, impossibly, was humming too. Just barely, just enough. Quinton felt his throat tighten. He turned away before they could see the tears he didn't know how to explain. Later, after Sloane had gone to bed, Quinton found Kandace in the study again. This time, she wasn't reading. She was writing. Her notebook was open on the desk, pages filled with neat, precise handwriting. "What are you working on?" Quinton asked from the doorway. Kandace looked up, not startled, like she'd known he was there the whole time. "Notes," she said simply. "For what?" She hesitated, then closed the notebook. "I used to be a researcher before this. I'm trying to finish something I started a long time ago." "What kind of research?" "Sociology, family systems, how people rebuild after loss." Quinton stepped into the room. "You were in academia?" "I was." Kandace's voice was careful, measured. "I walked away." "Why?" She looked at him for a long moment, deciding how much to share. "My parents died. House fire. My younger brother needed me more than the university did. So I left." Quinton absorbed this, the pieces of her starting to form a picture he didn't expect. "And now you clean houses." "Now I take care of people," Kandace corrected. "There's a difference." "Why here? Why this job?" "Because it lets me work without being seen, and right now, that's what I need." Quinton understood that better than he wanted to admit, the need to disappear, to rebuild in the shadows where no one was watching. "Your brother," Quinton said. "How old is he?" 16. He's in a good school now, full scholarship. He's going to be fine. Because of you." Kandace shrugged. "Because he's strong. I just made sure he had the chance to prove it." Quinton sat down in the chair across from her. For the first time since she'd arrived, they were just two people in a room, talking. "Sloane was humming today," Quinton said quietly. "I heard her." Kandace smiled. "She's been humming for a week. You just started listening." The words stung, but they were true. Quinton had been so focused on the silence that he'd stopped hearing the small sounds that meant his daughter was still in there, still fighting her way back. "How do I reach her?" he asked, and hated how much the question sounded like begging. "You stop trying so hard," Kandace said. "You stop treating her like a problem that needs solving and start treating her like a person who needs time. She'll come back when she's ready, but she needs to know you'll be there when she does." Quinton looked at this woman who cleaned his floors and cooked his food and somehow saw through every wall he'd built. "Who are you, really?" he asked again, softer this time. Kandace met his eyes. "I'm someone who knows what it's like to lose everything and have to build it back from nothing. And I'm someone who's not going to let you waste what you still have." Before Quinton could respond, his phone buzzed, a message from his lead attorney. "Emergency. Call immediately." Quinton's chest tightened. He stood, already dialing. The attorney answered on the first ring. "Quinton, we have a problem. A big one." "What happened?" "Hostile takeover. Someone's moving on your company. They're using the moral turpitude clause from your wife's estate. They're claiming child neglect to freeze your shares." Quinton felt the floor drop out from under him. "That's insane. Sloane is fine." They're arguing she's nonverbal, isolated, and you've been absent. They have documentation, testimony from medical professionals you consulted months ago. They're building a case that you're an unfit guardian, and if they can prove it, they can trigger the clause and lock you out of your own company. "How long do I have?" 72 hours. They're moving fast." Quinton ended the call and stood there, his mind racing. Everything he'd built, everything his wife had believed in, it was all about to collapse. Kandace was watching him. What's wrong? I'm being destroyed, Quinton said, his voice hollow. And there's nothing I can do to stop it. Kandace stood and walked over to him. Tell me what happened. Quinton explained. The takeover, the clause, the claim of neglect, the impossible timeline. When he finished, Kandace was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, and her voice was steady and sure. They're not trying to take your company. They're trying to prove your daughter is suffering. If you can prove she's not, their entire case falls apart. Quinton shook his head. How do I prove that in 3 days? She doesn't talk. She barely leaves her room. Any evaluator is going to see exactly what they want them to see. Then you show them something they're not expecting. Like what? Kandace walked over to the desk and picked up her notebook. She opened it and showed Quinton pages of notes, dates, observations, progress markers. Everything Sloane had done over the past 3 weeks. The humming, the drawing, the touch. All of it documented with the precision of a researcher who knew how to build a case. I've been tracking her, Kandace said. Every small step, every moment of progress. This isn't just anecdotal. This is evidence. Quinton stared at the pages. You've been documenting this the whole time? I told you, I used to be a researcher. Old habits. Kandace met his eyes. But documentation isn't enough. You need proof she's thriving. And for that, you need her to show them herself. She won't talk to strangers. She barely talks to me. She doesn't have to talk. She just has to show them she's engaged, present, connected. How? Kandace was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small digital recorder. I've been recording her, she said. With your permission or without it, I don't know. But I thought you'd want to hear her voice, even if it was just humming. She pressed play. The sound that came through the tiny speaker was soft at first, humming. The melody Kandace had been playing that first week. Then, faint but unmistakable, words. Look, Daddy, I drew the bridge. Quinton's knees nearly gave out. He grabbed the edge of the desk to steady himself. When? He whispered. Yesterday, Kandace said, while you were at work. She was showing me one of her drawings. She said it 3 times. I recorded it because I knew you wouldn't believe me. Quinton played it again and again. His daughter's voice, small and uncertain but there, real. This is it, he said, his voice breaking. This is the proof. It's a start, Kandace said, but you need more. You need to show them she's not just speaking. She's healing. Quinton looked at her, this woman who had walked into his life 3 weeks ago and turned everything upside down. Why are you doing this? He asked. Because someone did it for me once, Kandace said simply. And because your daughter deserves better than a father who's too afraid to fight for her. Quinton felt something shift inside him, something that had been frozen for 18 months, finally starting to thaw. Help me, he said. Kandace nodded. We have 3 days. Let's get to work. But before they could plan their next move, Quinton's phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from Tinsley. Heard about the takeover. I'm coming over. We need to strategize. Don't do anything until I get there. Quinton looked at the message, then at Kandace. She's on her way, he said. Kandace's expression darkened. Then we need to move fast, because if I'm reading this right, the person trying to destroy you isn't a stranger. It's someone who already has access to your life. Quinton's blood ran cold. What are you saying? I'm saying you should check who's been in your private files. And when. Quinton pulled up the security logs on his phone. His hands were shaking. He scrolled through the timestamps looking for anomalies. There. 3 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Last Thursday. Tinsley Dubois, in his study, alone, for 47 minutes. Quinton felt the world tilt. "She's been leaking information," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's the one feeding them everything they need." Kandace didn't look surprised. "Then you need to decide right now. Do you trust the woman who's been in your life for years, or the woman who's been in your home for 3 weeks? The elevator chimed. Tinsley was here. Quinton looked at Kandace, and in that moment, he made a choice that would either save his life or destroy it completely. "I trust you," he said. Kandace nodded. "Then let's finish this." Tinsley stepped off the elevator like she was walking into a war room. Her expression was sharp, focused, all business. But when she saw Kandace standing next to Quinton in the study, something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, then calculation. "Quinton," Tinsley said smoothly, setting her bag down on the desk. "I came as soon as I heard. This is serious. We need to assemble your legal team immediately and prepare a counter-response." "We already have a plan," Quinton said. Tinsley's smile didn't waver, but her eyes narrowed. "We? You mean you and your lawyers?" "I mean me and Kandace." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Tinsley looked at Kandace like she was a stain on expensive fabric. "Quinton, can I speak with you privately?" "No," Quinton said. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of her." Tinsley's mask slipped just slightly. "This is a multi-million-dollar hostile takeover, not a domestic issue. I don't think the help needs to be involved in corporate strategy." "Her name is Kandace," Quinton said, his voice cold, "and she's staying." Tinsley took a breath, visibly recalibrating. She walked over to the desk and pulled out a folder from her bag. "Fine. Then let me show you what we're dealing with." She spread documents across the desk. "They're claiming you're emotionally absent, that Sloane is deteriorating under your care. They have affidavits from 3 child psychologists you consulted last year, all stating concerns about her development and your ability to provide adequate emotional support." "Those were confidential consultations," Quinton said. "Apparently not confidential enough." Tinsley's voice was sympathetic, but her eyes were watching him like a hawk. "Someone close to you leaked them. Someone with access." Quinton let the implication hang in the air. He glanced at Kandace, who was standing quietly by the window observing. "You're right," Quinton said slowly. "Someone with access did leak them. Someone who's been in this study multiple times over the past month. Someone who had the time and opportunity to go through my files." Tinsley's expression froze. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating a fact." Quinton pulled up his phone and turned the screen toward her. "Security logs. You were in here alone for 47 minutes 2 weeks ago. What were you doing?" "Working," Tinsley said immediately. "You asked me to review the estate documents, remember? I needed privacy to focus." "I never asked you to review estate documents." The silence stretched. Tinsley's composure cracked just for a second before she recovered. "Quinton, you're under incredible stress. You're not thinking clearly. I've been your friend and advisor for years. You really think I would sabotage you?" "I think you want something I'm not willing to give you," Quinton said quietly. "And when people don't get what they want, they find other ways to take it." Tinsley's face hardened. "You're making a mistake, a huge one. If you alienate me now, you'll have no one in your corner when this goes to court. I'll take my chances." Tinsley looked at Kandace and her expression turned venomous. "This is your doing, isn't it? You come in here playing the savior, turning him against the people who actually care about him. What's your angle? Money? Access? Or are you just one of those people who gets off on chaos? Kandace met her gaze evenly. I don't have an angle. I'm just someone who sees what's happening and refuses to pretend it's normal. You've been here 3 weeks, Tinsley spat. I've known Quinton for 5 years. You don't get to walk in and rewrite history. I'm not rewriting anything, Kandace said calmly. I'm just helping him see what was always there. Tinsley grabbed her bag and turned to Quinton. You're going to regret this. When you lose everything, don't come crying to me. She stormed toward the elevator, but before she could leave, Quinton spoke. Tinsley. She stopped, her back still turned. I know it was you, Quinton said. I know you've been feeding information to the people trying to take my company, and I know why. Tinsley turned slowly, her expression unreadable. Enlighten me. Because you thought if I lost everything, I'd finally need you the way you wanted me to need you. You thought you could position yourself as the only person I had left. Tinsley's jaw tightened. You're delusional. Am I? Quinton pulled up another file on his phone. I had my security team do a deeper audit. Your phone was connected to my network during those visits. You weren't just reading files. You were copying them, sending them to an encrypted email address that traces back to the same law firm representing the hostile takeover. Tinsley's face went pale. You set this whole thing up, Quinton continued, his voice hard. You weaponized my daughter's grief to destroy me, and you thought I'd never figure it out. For a long moment, Tinsley said nothing. Then she laughed, cold and bitter. You want to know the truth, Quinton? You've been sleepwalking through your life for the past 2 years. Your company is vulnerable because you're vulnerable. I didn't create that. I just saw the opportunity and took it. That's what smart people do. And the part where you framed this as concern for Sloane? Oh, that was real, Tinsley said, her voice dripping with contempt. That little girl is suffering because you're too broken to be the father she needs. I thought losing your company might finally wake you up, force you to get your priorities straight. By taking everything I've built? By showing you what actually matters. Tinsley glanced at Kandace. Though it looks like someone else beat me to it. She stepped into the elevator. Before the doors closed, she looked at Quinton one last time. Good luck proving she's thriving, Quinton. You've got 48 hours. And when you fail, remember that I tried to help you. The doors closed. Quinton stood there, his heart pounding. He'd just burned a bridge he couldn't rebuild. And now he was standing on the edge of losing everything. Kandace walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing. Did I? Quinton's voice was raw. I just made an enemy out of one of the most connected people in Chicago. She's going to come at me with everything she has. Then we hit back harder, Kandace said. We prove Sloane is healing. We show them you're not the absent father they're claiming you are, and we do it in a way they can't dispute. How? Kandace picked up the digital recorder. We let Sloane tell her own story. Quinton looked at the tiny device, then at Kandace. They're going to want more than a recording. They're going to want to see her, evaluate her. And if she doesn't perform, if she shuts down, it's over. She won't shut down, Kandace said. Not if you're there with her. Not if she feels safe. I don't know if I can make her feel safe. I haven't been able to do that for 18 months. Then it's time to start. Quinton closed his eyes, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him. His company, his daughter, his entire life balanced on the edge of a decision he wasn't sure he could make. What if I fail? He whispered. Then you fail knowing you tried, Kandace said. But I don't think you will. Because for the first time since I walked in here, you're not trying to control everything. You're just trying to be present. And And that's all she's ever needed. Quinton opened his eyes and looked at this woman who had walked into his life like a storm and refused to leave until the air was clear. "Thank you," he said. Kandace smiled. "Don't thank me yet. We still have to win." They spent the next 48 hours preparing. Kandace compiled her notes into a comprehensive report documenting Sloane's progress. Quinton's legal team reviewed the recording and began building a countercase centered on the child's improvement, but they all knew the real test would come when Sloane had to face the evaluators in person. The morning of the evaluation, Quinton woke up at 5. He couldn't eat, couldn't think. He just stood at the window staring at the city he'd built his empire in, wondering if this was the last time he'd see it as a man who still had something to lose. Kandace arrived early. She found him in the study, still in the same clothes from the night before. "You didn't sleep," she said. "Couldn't." She walked over and handed him a cup of coffee. "Drink this, shower, put on something that makes you feel like yourself, not the billionaire, just..." Quinton took the coffee but didn't move. What if she doesn't talk? What if seeing strangers in the house makes her retreat? Then we show them she's still making progress in other ways. Art, music, connection. But Quinton, you need to trust her. She's stronger than you think. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this." Kandace looked at him with an expression that was both gentle and unyielding. "You don't have a choice. Your daughter is watching. She needs to see you fight, not for the company, for her." Quinton set down the coffee and went to get ready. An hour later, the evaluators arrived. 2 child psychologists and a family court representative. They moved through the penthouse with clinical detachment, taking notes, observing, measuring. Sloane sat on the couch, her tablet in her lap, her eyes wide and uncertain. Quinton sat beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Kandace stood in the background, out of the way but present. The lead psychologist, a woman named Dr. Brennan, sat down across from Sloane. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly. "My name is Dr. Brennan. I'm here to talk with you and your dad for a little while. Is that okay?" Sloane didn't respond. Dr. Brennan glanced at Quinton. "Has she been nonverbal the entire time since her mother's passing?" "Until recently," Quinton said. "She's started humming, and she spoke. We have it recorded." Dr. Brennan made a note. "Recorded speech isn't the same as spontaneous communication. We need to see if she can engage in real-time interaction." Quinton felt his chest tighten. This was it, the moment everything hinged on. Dr. Brennan turned back to Sloane. "Can you show me something you like to do?" Sloane looked at her father. Quinton nodded. Slowly, Sloane set down her tablet and walked over to the wall where her drawings were displayed. She pointed at one of the bridges. "Did you draw that?" Dr. Brennan asked. Sloane nodded. "It's beautiful. Can you tell me about it?" Sloane's lips parted. She looked at Kandace, who gave her an encouraging smile. Then, in a voice so small it was almost a whisper, Sloane spoke. "It's Daddy's bridge, the one he built." The room went silent. Dr. Brennan's pen stopped moving. The court representative looked up from her notes. Quinton felt tears sting his eyes, but he didn't move. He didn't want to break the moment. Dr. Brennan leaned forward gently. "Which bridge is that, sweetheart?" Sloane pointed at the drawing. "The one over the river. He built it so people could get home." Her voice was clearer now, gaining strength with each word. Dr. Brennan smiled. "That's wonderful. Do you like bridges?" Sloane nodded. "Daddy says they connect things that are far apart." Quinton's throat closed. He'd told her that once, years ago, before everything fell apart. He didn't know she remembered. Dr. Brennan spent the next 30 minutes with Sloane, asking questions, watching her draw, listening to her hum. And with each passing minute, Sloane opened up a little more. When the evaluation ended, Dr. Brennan stood and shook Quinton's hand. "Mr. Rhodes, I'll submit my report by tomorrow, but I can tell you now, this child is not neglected. She's healing, and that's largely because of the environment you've created for her." Quinton exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. "Thank you." After the evaluators left, Quinton sat down on the floor next to Sloane. She was back at her drawings, adding colors to one of the bridges. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. Sloane looked at him, and for the first time in 18 months, she smiled. "I'm proud of you too, Daddy." Quinton pulled her into a hug, and she didn't pull away. She just held on. Across the room, Kandace watched them, her eyes shining. She picked up her bag and quietly headed for the door. "Kandace," Quinton called after her. She stopped. "Stay for dinner?" Kandace hesitated, then smiled. "I'd like that." That evening, the three of them sat at the table together. The food was simple, nothing fancy, just pasta and salad and bread. But it tasted like victory. Sloane talked, not a lot, but enough, about her drawings, about a song she liked, about wanting to see one of her dad's bridges in person. Quinton listened, really listened, for the first time in longer than he could remember. And Kandace sat across from them. No longer the maid, no longer the stranger. Just someone who had walked into their broken home and refused to leave until it was whole again. Later, after Sloane had gone to bed, Quinton and Kandace stood on the balcony looking out at the city. "The evaluator's report will be positive," Quinton said. "The takeover will fall apart. Tinsley's credibility is destroyed. I'm going to win." "You already won," Kandace said. "You got your daughter back." Quinton looked at her. "I couldn't have done this without you." "Yes, you could have. You just needed someone to remind you what was worth fighting for." They stood in silence for a moment, the city glittering below them. "What happens now?" Quinton asked. "You've been working here for almost a month, but that was never really what this was about, was it?" Kandace smiled. "No, it wasn't." "So what do you want, really?" Kandace turned to face him. "I want to finish my research. I want to go back to school and complete what I started, and I want to know that the work I did here mattered." "It did," Quinton said. "More than you know." "Then help me," Kandace said. "Help me go back. Fund my research. Give me the chance to do for other families what I did for yours." Quinton didn't hesitate. "Done." Kandace's eyes widened. "Just like that?" "Just like that," Quinton smiled. "You gave me my daughter back. I think that's worth an investment." Kandace laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "You're not going to negotiate terms?" "The terms are simple. You finish your PhD, you help other people, and you stay in our lives. Because Sloane needs you. And honestly, so do I." Kandace looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." The next morning, Quinton received the official report from Dr. Brennan. It was exactly what he needed. The hostile takeover collapsed within hours. Tinsley's involvement was exposed, her reputation in ruins. But Quinton didn't care about any of that. He was sitting on the floor of the living room with Sloane, helping her paint a new bridge. This one was bigger, brighter, stretching across the entire canvas. Kandace walked in, no longer carrying a cleaning kit. She had her research notebooks, her laptop, a coffee from the shop down the street. "Ready to work?" Quinton asked. "Always," Kandace said. She sat down at the table and Quinton realized something. The penthouse wasn't a museum anymore. It wasn't cold or silent or empty. It was a home. And for the first time since he'd lost his wife, Quinton Rhodes felt like he could breathe. Sloane looked up from her painting and smiled at Kandace. "Can we go see Daddy's bridge today?" Kandace glanced at Quinton. "Can we?" Quinton nodded. "Yeah." Let's go see the bridge." They spent the afternoon at the riverfront, standing beneath the massive structure Quinton had designed years ago. Sloane ran ahead, laughing, pointing at the cables and supports, asking questions Quinton answered with patience he didn't know he still had. Kandace stood beside him, watching. "You built something beautiful," she said. "I did," Quinton agreed. "But it took me a long time to remember why it mattered." Sloane ran back to them, grabbing both their hands. "Come on," she said, pulling them forward. "Let's walk across it together." And they did. The three of them, crossing the bridge Quinton had built, the city stretching out around them. Quinton looked at Kandace and saw everything he'd been missing, not just in his home, but in himself. "Thank you," he said quietly. Kandace squeezed his hand. "You don't have to keep thanking me." "I know," Quinton said, "but I'm going to anyway." Months later, Kandace stood at the front of a lecture hall at the University of Chicago, presenting her research on family systems and recovery after loss. Quinton sat in the back row, Sloane beside him, watching. When Kandace finished, the room erupted in applause. She caught Quinton's eye and smiled. After the presentation, they met outside the building. Sloane ran up to Kandace and hugged her. "You were amazing," the little girl said. Kandace laughed. "Thank you, sweetheart." Quinton walked up, his hands in his pockets. "So, Dr. Thorne, how does it feel?" "Surreal," Kandace admitted. "I never thought I'd actually finish. I never doubted you for a second." Kandace looked at him, and something passed between them. Something that had been building for months, unspoken but undeniable. "What now?" she asked. "Now," Quinton smiled. "Now, we keep building. Together." Kandace took his hand, and Sloane took the other, and the three of them walked across campus. A family that had been broken and rebuilt, stronger than before. Because Kandace Thorne hadn't just cleaned a penthouse. She'd reminded a man that the most important structures aren't made of steel. They're made of the people who refuse to let you fall. And sometimes, the person who saves you is the one you never saw coming. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We have more incredible stories coming that will inspire you, challenge you, and remind you what really matters in life. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here. See you in the next one.